To intro or not to intro? I wonder if people like my intro. Well, who cares? Here it is. Good morning. Bang your head. Wake up. Ah, yes. Good morning. How are you? I am fine. Basic conversation. Basic conversation is important. And yesterday was a very, 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 very frustrating day in the art of conversation. I was trying to book a load, and I kid you not, there was 20 emails that were left unanswered. And then 10 more where it was just the basics. Picks up at 3, delivers at 2. What rate? I mean, come on now. It was very frustrating, because I have this habit. So I go to the load board and I email a broker, and I blind copy one of my other email addresses. And so I can look at the other email address and I can look and see who I've dealt with, right? Who I've emailed and all that. Because when you're making 20 emails, if you don't keep track, even phone calls, like when I was in the truck, I would have my pad of paper. And as I went through the load board, I was like, okay, I've already called on this. I had to write everything down. And then the reason why I didn't want the load, or the reason why the load fell through. So I'm not recalling it, because a lot of brokers don't take their load postings down. And I found myself, calling on the same load twice. Not realizing that I'd already dialed this broker, and he'd already said that it was covered, even though it was still on the load board. When you get to that point of self-dispatch, it becomes frustrating. And so, to me, that's one of the most important parts about broker-carrier relationships, is that you can avoid a lot of that by avoiding load boards. As much as possible. Now, can you make some good money on the load boards? Absolutely. But sometimes the hunt wears you out. And yesterday was kind of one of those days where, you call in the load, it picks up at 5 or 6 or 7 p.m. Or drop trailer at the shipper and then a drop trailer at the receiver, or it's hazmat, but they didn't list that. Or it's got 22 stops and they're paying not even enough for a one and done. It's crazy the things that I was seeing yesterday. And every, I don't know, about 3 or 4 times a quarter, there's that one day that just kind of punches me in the face and says, you don't know nothing. I know, double negatives, right? I'm a double negative person. So, but it's interesting. And look, for those of us that brave the spot market, that brave the low boards, this is part of the game. It gets frustrating. But it can also be rewarding. And you can also make some money. That's not a lie. That's why I continue to do it, right? So let's go to Fate Trucking's comment here. Easy to fix unanswered emails, run customer freight. The low board is trash right now, typical spot freight. I agree that there are aspects of the low board that were trash, especially yesterday. I had a couple of drivers call me and text me and say, hey, man, what are you seeing? I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. But you can create consistency in the spot market. But customer freight has its own challenges. And guess what? I do have customer freight that I utilize. But see, I could have utilized more, but when I contacted 20 drivers, only 3 or 4 of them came back willing to do it. A lot of drivers want to do what they want to do, which is fine. That's one of the reasons why we become owner operators, is we want to do and go wherever we want, right? And so you have to work within those boundaries. And I can mimic the act of customer freight if you work with a broker that has the direct customer freight, which is what I've got. And if you nurture that relationship, it has its rewards. I've seen it. I've lived it, seen it, done it. And what you guys do over there at your carrier Fate Trucking is awesome. But I know it also creates a lot of stress in a different way, right? To be able to do customer freight, you got to have equipment. You got to invest in a lot of equipment. And I'm definitely not saying one's better than the other, but customer freight is definitely consistent. But a person can create consistency in the spot market too. And then there are the people that just run it like the Wild West. They go after the biggest money, going to the best areas, and hoping for the best and riding the wave, right? But you can create consistency, whether running the same lanes or running for a lot of the same brokers, or both, or finding the broker that has like a little niche or a project that they're working on that you can help them out with for about a month or so, or even a week, right? So slow and steady definitely wins the race. I agree with that. So anyways, let's go with the other comments, and then we'll look at some low board stuff. We'll look at the weather real quick. My name is Nobody. Good morning. Fate Trucking morning from Tough Guy Town, Chicago. Watch out for the mafia there. Gary Cook, good morning from Indianapolis, Indiana. How are things going over at Advance? Daniel Nottingham is a good friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a while. I hope you guys are doing okay over there. So, Josh Savingan, what's up? Let's see. In this market, my opinion is consistency equals steady. I think you meant to say steady pay. That is true. You did. I've noticed that brokers post their loads more than one time. That is absolutely and positively true. And learning to recognize that when that happens is key. It's very frustrating for a newbie on the spot market when they see that. I remember the first load I ever booked. One of the first loads I ever booked. Check this out. So TQL is notorious for that. They're notorious for posting multiple times from multiple cities for the same load, right? And I noticed that there was a bunch of loads going from, they were coming from Henrietta, Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Okmulgee, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, going to Springfield, Missouri. Or it was going to Joplin, Missouri. Or it was going to Nixa, Missouri. Or it was going to Republic, Missouri. Or it was going to, what was the other one? Carthage, Missouri, right? But because I knew that customer on both ends, I knew that the actual load was Henrietta, Oklahoma to Springfield, Missouri. And what that was glass bottles going to French's for the hot sauce that they make. And that's when I realized that I have to be aware of that. Now, at the time, they were one of the few brokers that were doing that. But now there's several of them. But you can recognize that. Learning to recognize that is important, right? And then the other reason why that happens is because you might have 10 agents with a computer screen that have to move the same load. And so you'll see it, like Axel's, notorious for doing that. They'll have one load posted 18 times with 18 different agents and 18 different emails. And what's interesting is there are some brokers that I've actually seen that, and I'll actually copy and paste all their email and email them all together. I don't know if that starts any inter-office fights or what, but And then a lot of loads are posted via a TMS system. And a TMS system, on like a send can post to 3 or 4 or 5 different. You can connect your load boards as a broker to your TMS system to where you can post it all at once, right? You don't have, very rarely do you have a broker at his desk, posting on the DAT board, unless, they put a lot of information. That's why, like, when we go to the 123 load board, when you look at a posting, well, it's not showing it here, but, and I'll get this on the screen here shortly, but you'll see, like, default, like, temperature and, must have this and that, you can put those default things in. So CM Freight Broker, good morning, Steve. And it's great that I have friends like CDN, because he can kind of tell me what's happening on the other side. I have a broker company that calls me all the time with different agents. I literally have 8 of their agents on my Google chat. And a few of them are probably watching now. There's a lot of broker agents that really don't know a whole lot about logistics. They're told to move these at 10 loads at this amount percentage. Don't go over this number. You need approval to go over a certain number, right? And that's part of the game, right? That's part of the game. Gary says you're surviving. Well, good, because I was worried, because there was a comment that you made on my last live feed that made it sound like you weren't doing well. So I just, I'm just checking on you, Gary. You are the captain of your ship, my friend. Sterling, good morning. Receiver just woke me up to see if it was all right. Are you all right, though? What did you tell them, Sterling? Did you go, I am fine, or did you go, I have a lot of issues? Nothing will turn a receiver away by saying, I have a lot of issues. Josh Vingan, what's up? He's got his eyeballs. Ms. Death Touch, how's it going? I will touch base with you for our festivities tomorrow. So, Mrs. A saying hi. Mr. Mallory, how are you doing? Mr. Mallory is an example of someone who left the spot market to do customer freight. Actually, he left the whole dry van platform. So, and that works too, right? That works too. Spot market is just an itty bitty spot of the trucking industry, right? Gary says some weeks are good, some weeks are ugly, but I'm hanging in there and I learn from my mistakes. Well, I was just worried about you because that post, I don't know, man. We all need to learn from our mistakes. But see, that's trucking in general. I mean, even as a company driver, I had some good weeks. I had some weeks that were ugly, and I made mistakes, and I had to learn from them, right? The trick is affording those mistakes. Like, there's one of my more popular recent videos was my failure at Landstar. And looking back, I can easily see the mistakes that I made and can learn from them. And I have learned from them. Just like Schneider, when I was owner operator there were mistakes that I made, but I was able to avoid a lot of the mistakes because I had a good mentor over there, Mr. Jeffrey Light. And having good mentors is important in this industry because frankly, there's a lot of people, inexperienced people running their business here. Not here at like trucking, but like here in the spot market. Cheers. We got our We Are Metal, We Are Family coffee mug. You got to be able to adapt, overcome, expect the worst, underpromise, and overperform. The contractors in any carrier that I see that are more successful are the ones that follow that to the T. The ones that struggle, especially when times are hard, it's because of their own actions usually. Yes, there are unexpected actions like somebody taking out your hood at a truck stop or an accident that wasn't your fault or a delay that makes you have to sit on a load for a week. Those are things that are somewhat out of our control. But that's where that adapt and overcome has to come in, right? It's tough. It is tough. It isn't easy. We don't want it to be easy. Because if it was easy, like in 2021, every Joe Schmo would be out here with their $60,000 EIDL loans, making money hand over fist until something goes wrong, right? And that's what happened. The big message about with the Trumpsters and the tariffs is that we got to go through some pain to get to the other side. And it's interesting that people get criticized for that comment, but that's essentially true with anything. The first 2 years of being a OTR truck driver is like, I would think that it's similar to training or boot camp or something. You got to put in your licks. You got to fall down. You got to stumble. You got to be punched in the face. And that's just life, right? And the under promise and overperform. You notice that the government does the opposite. They overpromise and underperform. Have you noticed that people that aren't successful in life or are ate up with ego and pride overpromise and underperform? Coincidence, huh? Right? You want to be humble, but you don't want to insult yourself. You want to have a sense of confidence. But because people are going to criticize you, people are going to make fun of you, people are going to say you're doing this wrong and that wrong and all that. Social media is such a poison seed. But just keep on keeping on. Be able to adapt, overcome, be teachable, learn from your mistakes. There's a meme where it's a video where this guy pulls this sheep out of this precarious ditch, that he got himself, precarious position he got himself in this ditch, right? So it takes like 3 guys to get this sheep out of the ditch. And the sheep runs around in the circle and then goes right back into the ditch. And I too, it's like you solve a problem and then the problem gets unsolved. And that's part of life. I've noticed that. And it burns you out. You go through seasons of life where you okay, I've solved these problems. Why are they coming back? Or you think you have a solution and you don't. I'm going to get a new truck. Okay, well, then the new truck breaks down. I'm going to go to a new carrier. Then that carrier is not any better than the carrier that you were at, right? And then, so next thing you know, you've switched jobs 20 times in your career, and you switched trucks 83 times in your career. And you sit there and a person sits there and wonders why they can't get forward. They can't make any money, that they're, then they get on Facebook and they gripe. They start these Facebook groups that do nothing but gripe about trucking. We need to change this. We need to change this. We need to change this. The government this, the government this, the government this. Meanwhile, as they're saying that, they're throwing their own trash out in the Walmart parking lot. Or they're flipping off the receiving manager because they've had a bad day, right? But yet it's everybody else's reasons of why trucking sucks, right? And that's one of the reasons why Jeff started the PITA, because he recognizes that you need to start taking actions, but we can't just blame everybody else for our problem. We have to look first, right? There are people doing very well in the spot market. There are people doing very well with customer freight, like Fate Truck in there. But there are also people not doing well with the spot market, or they're not doing well with customer freight. Because either the customer or the carrier or the broker is over promising and under delivering, just like the government, right? Anyways, that's enough of that kind of talk. Who am I? All I am is just a guy that worked for one company as a company driver for 6 years, became an owner operator, spent a year and a half at Landstar, 2 years at Schneider, and then the rest of my owner operatorship was at Like Trucking in the spot market. And I've seen this company have its ups and downs. And I sold my truck last year, actually 23. And because I eventually wanted to transition out of the truck. I love trucking. You know, Sterling Trucking Delivers. He's been doing these vlogs where he's got a GoPro on his head. I had somebody call me and go, dude, he's live streaming. No, he's not. He's doing what they call a vlog, which, you know, a lot of our little inner circle, a lot of us have turned to this podcast thing or just talking on our 10-hour break on a vertical live stream. And you know, and there's some things that like, I kind of miss that. I kind of miss that. You know, and then like Wheel Burner was live, you know, just showing the sunrise. And it's like, I kind of miss that. But at the same time, the things that I've dealt with at home and me me helping the company grow has been rewarding. And that was eventually the goal. You know, a lot of people criticized me for my loyalty to Like Trucking. And I'm still here, baby. I'm still here. Mr. Mallory says, excellent. LOL. I told them I needed another 6 hours of sleep. Are they cool? My cool. We cool. Good deal. Good deal. Everybody saying hi to each other. T-Bone, what's up? Dan's hot shot. Agents who don't know a lot. Yesterday, I had one tell me that pallets of mulch had to be on a flatbed, no step decks, as Walmart couldn't unload steps. I had to explain that I was loading a Walmart load right then, and a step deck is lower than a flat. Still couldn't get him to understand. This is true. I had an agent actually tell me that they knew nothing about logistics and their schooling was in something else completely. But the degree got her job, right? And so if the other agents want to educate them, then we can educate them, right? We as drivers can educate the brokers and explain to them why. Like when they say this picks up at 3 p.m. today, delivers tomorrow at 9 a.m., and it's 710 miles in the Northeast. Some days I have the courage and patience to tell them why that's a problem. Other days I just go, okay, thanks. Those times won't work for me. Click, right? But the ones that I actually try to, so you do it in a nice way. You don't sit there and like, well, you can't do that one shift, right? You got to be like, oh man, yeah, that's going to make it very difficult to do in one shift. Can I be loaded early? Can you promise that? And then you got to be aware of the overpromise, underdeliver. Because you might get to the shipper and find out that no, they will not load you early. And so you can't make that run. And next thing you know, the broker's finding you $200 for being late. Or it's a Walmart load and they make you sit a week because there's no other appointments because you were 4 hours late. Or you're a shady carrier that unplugged the ELD. And so if the broker knows that this is an issue with the scheduling and you've taught them why, then it allows them to reevaluate the situation. But a shady broker will sit there and say, oh, no, it could deliver tomorrow too. And if you don't know anything about the spot market, you might not know better. Oh, it can deliver the next day, just whenever you get there. One time I called on a load. I had to get a truck to Colorado for home time. And I called on a load, and I won't mention the broker, but I called it and say, hey, I missed in your load. And this was like 4:00 on a Friday afternoon. They had to be in Denver by Monday. Called them up and said, hey, I missed in your load picking up in blah, 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 going blah, blah, blah. And what's the pickup time? Oh, well, I think they'll load you till 6, but if not, they'll load you tomorrow or Monday. And I said, who's the shipper? They told me who the shipper was. I looked on the Googles. Close it Friday at 5:00. This guy was trying to cover a Monday load on a Friday. The load officially picked up on Monday. And had I fallen for that, my truck would have sat and not made it home for a very important event to get back to Denver. Those lessons have to come through experience. And luckily, I had a lot of friends that experienced that already, so I knew to look out for that. And yesterday, when I was trying to get Sterling moved, I noticed that there were a lot of brokers posting for the 10th, but the loads actually picked up on the 11th. I'm like, okay. And luckily, I still found something, but it became worse and worse and worse as the day progressed because they were desperate to move. And people that are desperate do desperate things, right? So helping the brokers understand in a nice way of why their load doesn't work for you can maybe help them out. But 9 times out of 10, he might just be dealing with that agent that was given this project and just make it work. And so they might have to look for the carriers that are willing to bend the rules a little bit. They're not going to say that, of course. And there are carriers out there that will do it. The ones using the non-approved ELDs that they just go, yoink. All right, I'll make it, you know. Gary Cook says, I learned the spot market from Celadon from 2015 to 2017. I found advanced trucking through YouTube. I love what I do, but I don't go home a lot. I pretty much live in the truck. I'm kind of a boring person. Gary, I think that you have, I think you need to build up your confidence, man. Bull of Woods, good morning. Sterling, my biggest concern in the market is just how unfair it is for us professionals. This is true, but you still keep on keeping on, right? Shannon, what's up? Good morning. Morning, Ms. SDT. Always have a camera nearby, be warned. CDN, loyalty is a two-way street. Steve and Jeff are the perfect example. Yes. I used to hate trucking, and now I like trucking. Not sure if I love it yet. Right now, with unstable rates, shippers are putting huge pressure to reduce freight spend. Carriers, if you have been with same insurance, mechanic, ELD, et cetera, now's the time to leverage long-term. Next, leverage your long-term with a supplier to explain your current market. I'm expecting to cut my cost 20%. Awesome. I'm coming to you as I've been with you for X amount of years. Work hard to reduce costs. Work hard to build relationships, to build consistent revenue. 2025 is not about negotiating best rate because most loads are posted by 5 or 6 brokers. Shippers are seeking low rates. Sterling got bone. I was practically the only truck that left the truck stop parking. Lots of cobwebs. Like I said, CDN's got good insight. Good insight, and that's important. A lot of times CDM will ask me questions like I'm smart or something. What do you see from the carrier's viewpoint of this? Or what are you seeing in the markets that you're running in? What are your drivers seeing? You know, what's it mean when a driver does this? What would you say when a carrier, and he'll mention a story that a carrier's done to him? What is your guys' resolution for this? I mean, it's a two-way street. It's great. With both feet, good morning. Hope all is well. Glad to catch you live, Steve. Absolutely. Look at that poor birdie running away in your avatar there. All right, so let's get the low board up here because that's why you're really here, for the boring low board stuff, right? Right. You want to see the magic. You want to see the magic. All right, there's your magic. 48065 if you want to try the 123 low board for free for 30 days, because we all need a way to save money and look at stuff, right? Saving money and look at stuff. Off topic, Kerry Trainer he did a video where he went to the Spider Co headquarters there in Colorado. And it was awesome to watch. Like, I would have I'm too broke of a person to go in that place. So it was kind of, it's good to have free things. And there was nothing free in that store other than the looky-loos, right? Anyways, this is for Van. Actually, let's do the weather real quick here. Basically high wind. It's going to be windy out west as usual. What's this gray here? Dense fog up here in the Dakotas and Minnesota. And then freeze and frost warning. It's a little bit chilly through the Midwest here. But other than that, it looks pretty quiet for a change. So that's good. So easy running today. Easy running. Right? Let's see. Gen Z, morning. Hauling my first load of 60-foot beams today. Well, good luck. Good luck and Godspeed. You're like Paul Harvey now. We know the rest of the trucking market. Yeah. Well, I do what I can. Ontario, Ohio, any weekend roller 53 van. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look. All right, so let's take a look at Ohio, right? All right, highest rate, $1.42 to go to Fife. Have fun there in the land of Starbucks. $1.86 to here we go, Fremont, Ohio to Riviera Beach, Florida. Pretty deep in there. 91%. Above my profit per day grocery item. They're at 28. Normally goes between 31 and 29. So negotiate a little bit because the outbound rates are going to be horrible coming out, right? Lima to West Palm Beach, another one, 244 mile, $2,800. California, Nevada, $1.40 to Nevada. You can make more money going 1,100 miles to Florida than you can going 2,000 miles to Las Vegas. Or you can make the same amount of money only going 1,200 miles to Loveland, Colorado, which, it's struggling out there too. But at least the weather's nice, right? And then being a little windy. New Hampshire, 284 mile. That's good. $1.88 to Denver. Not good. Especially out of Ohio. Lots of good loads. Let's do the highest rate per mile. That will tell us. A lot of the shorties. $3 a mile go to Lindenhurst, New York. Wonder if that's New York City. Sorry, I don't know my New York cities. Look at the map. Yeah, it's Long Island. So how many tolls we got? $172 tolls. Not bad, actually, for going into New York there. This will be a bugger. So if you don't know the area and, you probably get a little bit more money doing something else. But there is a need for everything. And if you are the person that can master the art of driving in and out of New York City, you can do well with that. I know several drivers that do that. Let's see. Just watch your nets. Just watch your net costs or your net profit, because that's what gets affected by those tolls. So, most impressive business right now is WWE. John Cena comes back, becomes a villain. He can go into the ring just standing and looking at the crowd as they chant John Cena sucks after 12 minutes of not saying a word, then rips the crowd for 12 to 15 minutes. How many of you could be silent with the CEO just sitting silent? I'm amazed that they fill stadiums weekly. Hardworking team. So CDN is a wrestling fan. That's interesting. But you are right. Can you stay silent when needed, right? There's power there, right? There's power. And the people that are probably watching that are, that he triggered are all emotional. And the emotional people are spending money. They're like, I will buy a shirt. I will buy a shirt that says John Cena sucks, blah, 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 blah. Because I agree, What an interesting platform to make money, right? This ain't gonna be a long live feed. We're not even at an hour yet, but I gotta find the load. And I just wanted to kind of give you guys a basis. Let's take a look at DAT load counts, shall we? Let's take a look at their load counts as well. Let's refresh this. Let's take a look at Ohio. Ooh, 965 in and 508 out. No wonder they were only wanting $1.80 to go to Denver. Wow. Should have landed him in the southeast. What's Georgia look like? 1114 in, 1268 out. There's more loads coming out of Georgia than there are out of Ohio. I'm telling you, man, Friday load counts are they're tripping me up a little bit. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff in the spot market, but these are tripping me up a little bit. This should all be maxed out. Now, before you go there and say that I'm fear mongering or, you're making a depressing picture, Steve, here's the thing. Awareness is power. Awareness is key. Now I know what I'm up against. Now I'm not like blindly calling brokers and wondering why I can't get that extra 50 or $100, right? But let's see what 123 says. 495 outbound, 429 inbound. So they're still showing an in and out better ratio. 630, and they're still showing Georgia being more outbound than Ohio. It looks like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio have about the same amount of outbound. You'll probably get a better rate outbound out of Indiana because it's got the least inbound. Those ratios matter, folks. I don't care what you say. It's through experience that I say these things. Yeah, we'll get on it. Like Cuban sandwiches, Sterling? I know Shannon likes Cuban sandwiches. So, inside joke. Inside joke. I don't know. Sterling probably doesn't know what I'm talking about. All right, let's take a look at Reefer, just in case Fate's still watching. If you didn't get bored with the spot market talk, look at that. There's your spot Reefer, Fate. If you're still watching, not a whole lot coming out of California. Highest volumes are Illinois, California, New York, or PA, Georgia, of course Texas, but that's relative, right? Because it's a big state. And then let's throw in step deck and flatbed. Broken record, red in the west, green in the east, southeast. Yellow in Oregon and California, so it's picking up a little bit. This is where you need to be. 2,800 loads out of Alabama alone. 1,500 loads out of Georgia. And that's not just a 1, 2, 3 low board. Let's put flatbed, flatbeds, and then let's put step decks. Deck standard. Okay, I got it. All right. All right. Alabama. 4,600 loads coming out of Alabama in the flatbed step deck world. Look at that. Georgia, 3,400 loads. Florida, 2,200 loads. North Carolina, still more out, more in than out. So Mississippi, 198 in and 3,142 coming out. Man. So yeah, if I was a flatbedder, I'd just go from, Georgia to Mississippi to Alabama to Louisiana to Arkansas to Georgia to Florida to, I would just like a star pattern here. You'll make your money. You'll make about $1,000 a day doing that. All right, so 48065 if you want to try out the 123 low board for free. There's ways to support the channel. Also, if you're interested in coming over here with your own truck, like trucking.com, and we'll treat you like family as much as we possibly can. So, old school trucking, what's up? LOL, yes, Cuban sandwiches. And Sterling is it. And Sterling and Snow Rider. Cuban sandwich sounds great. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with my crap. And be humble, be safe. Strength for today, hope for tomorrow. And we'll see you hopefully Monday. If not, we'll see you Wednesday. If not, we'll see you Friday. Peace.